These, like, I would never ever want to know if anybody ever wrote fan fiction about me or a character I played. Whereas I'm like, I will seek it out. If I play a beloved character someday, if somehow the stars align and somebody's like,
Mm-hmm.
you, chubby, almost 40-year-old woman, you're who we need. I'll be like, yes, I'm here. If I go through the work of playing a character that is like beloved enough to have fan fiction written. If people aren't writing smutty fan fiction about me in my almost 40-year-old body, I will feel like I failed as an actress.
What did I do wrong?
Why did we fight a war, guys? Come on. What are we doing? So I'll write it myself and then I'll just post it anonymously and I'll start my own damn fandom. I don't care.
Welcome to Stand, the podcast where we dissect our enthusiastic and, at times, obsessive relationships with cultural phenomena. I mean, have you ever caught yourself unironically insisting that it's not just a phase? Or stayed up all night to finish that book that you just can't put down? Or have you ever had such a huge crush on a celebrity that it made your heart physically ache? I have. So join me as we figure out why certain things or people capture our attention and affection so well. I'm really happy that you're here. Holy cow, this episode is so overdue. In 2016, this series came out and laid the foundation for Netflix originals, which has since produced hits like Bridgerton and Squid Games and Adolescence, and changed the format and structure of television as a whole. It set the tone for a bingeable, cinematic, long-form storytelling and was, in my humble opinion, one of the catalysts for the switch from traditional television to streaming. It is none other than Stranger Things. If you're unfamiliar with the show or you just need a quick refresher, I got you. The series follows a group of tweens and teens in the 1980s in a small town in Midwestern America. Hawkins, Indiana, to be precise. The story follows separate threads that work in tandem to resolve a mystery when children in the town start to go missing. As the plot continues, the residents discover a secret demon underworld called the Upside Down, and it's revealed that the fabric between this parallel universe and our world is ripping, causing the overflow of evil beings from their world to enter into ours. At the same time, another child appears seemingly out of nowhere, and we find out that she has escaped from a government facility where they're testing the limits of human capacity by bestowing superhuman abilities onto children, presumably to use as weapons in the Cold War. Again, this is the 1980s. As the season progresses, the children contend with different monsters that appear, and they're forced to continuously save the world. If you think that was a bad pitch, first of all, I'm tired and it's complicated, so relax. Second of all, you're not alone. In fact, the creators of the show, the Duffer Brothers, were pitching the story for 2 years and faced rejection from 15 different studios before getting greenlit by Netflix. Netflix's decision to buy the series was extremely consequential, not only for the company, but for television in general. At the time, the Netflix catalog was mostly reruns, and Stranger Things was one of the first originals they decided to produce. It generated an estimated $1 billion in streaming revenue, and then, as most things do when they have cultural traction, they had 1 million offshoots and partnerships. They had clothing lines with Gap, Nike, Converse, Zara, and even Crocs. They collaborated with Lego to recreate the set. And they even had Stranger Things Christmas ornaments, pens, coffee machines, you name it. Whatever you wanted, you could buy a Stranger Things version of it. There were countless pop-ups and live experiences. I remember living in New York, and one of the things marked on Google Maps at all times was the Stranger Things experience in Brooklyn Navy Yard. It was everywhere. It became such a recognizable cultural reference that it seemed like anything it touched suddenly became popular. Interest in Dungeons and Dragons, for example, the fantasy roleplay game that the kids play, was boosted 673%. People started eating Eggo waffles again because one of the characters famously liked them. And most notably, Kate Bush's 1985 single, Running Up That Hill, was the UK #1 for 3 consecutive weeks because it features in an episode. As ever, where there's popularity, there was also drama. People began speculating over whether the cast got on behind the scenes, becoming convinced that Millie Bobby Brown was disliked by the other cast members. There was also a question about about whether she logged complaints about David Harbour's attitude on set. There was also a ton of disgusting and weird and judgmental comments about her body and how she was aging and the decisions she was making in her personal life. There has also been outrage over Noah Schnapp and Brett Goldman's Zionist political beliefs. And in the fandom world, there's been a lot of controversy about how the series ended. And the shipping between the characters has gone pretty crazy, which is something we really dive into with our guests. I could not feel luckier to speak with V Arrow and Emily Jaye of the podcast This Week in Fandom History. They are experts on fandom communities and so knowledgeable and funny and interesting, and they really made Stranger Things come to life for me. I mean that so sincerely. I was catching up on Stranger Things and I was flagging in season 3, and immediately after I filmed this episode I went into the next room and was like, I'm watching the rest of it. Their analysis is so apt, and I'm not exaggerating, I had to type the word cackles into the transcription because they made me laugh so much that no other word could correctly describe the noises I was making. A little housekeeping. I filmed this in India during a 50 degrees Celsius heat wave. So if you hear the AC in the background, sue me. Also, towards the end, someone was having a wedding down the road, which means you can hear celebrating in the background as well. We cover so much ground in this episode, and it was near impossible to cut it down. We get into the genius of the 80s film references, how Stranger Things defined its own format, and exemplified cross-genre writing, and whether Steve Harrington is the blueprint for the perfect redemption arc. Without further ado, here it is. Would you mind introducing yourselves, please?
Go for it, V.
My name is Hi. No, my name is not Hi. Hi, my name is V. I also go by Aim My Arrows High online. And we are co-hosts on This Week in Fandom History, and the other half of the we is
Your podcast wife, Emily
Yes.
Jaye. Hi. I go by I Don't Get Technology, or MJ on AO3. We're happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about this topic because we don't get to do a lot of episodes about this. So.
It's true. I think it's just because it is still a newer fandom. It doesn't have that entrenched history like something like a Star Trek or a Star Wars.
And there hasn't been like big moments in fandom. I mean, there's been big moments
Right.
on the show, obviously, but like
Yes.
as a fandom collective.
And we're going to talk about as well, not only the fandom, but your personal relationships to Stranger Things. Can you tell me about when you first came across Stranger Things? Where did it come to you in your life? And why did it affect you so much?
Well, I have been watching since the beginning. I am a big horror fan, big paranormal girly. So I watched the preview and I was like, oh, this has all the things. And it's weird to say, but like the thing that we both brought up was like, oh, they use the Stephen King font. That's smart.
Yes. Yeah, they did.
And it was
Yes.
like, we were living in a different part of New York. I had a job that I hated. Like everything was just kind of not great. So then this show happened and it was like this nice little, okay, do you want to watch one episode or two tonight to cheer up from your horrible job?
Oh, yeah, horrible jobs are really all-consuming.
They are. And you need something to go home to.
And then you stuck with it through all of the seasons as well.
I don't consider myself like a die-hard fan. Like I didn't have a countdown or anything. V's like, I know how much fan fiction you've written, you lying liar.
Yeah. Well, and you're literally wearing a Hellfire shirt right now.
I dressed for the occasion.
Pause. The Hellfire Club is the Dungeons and Dragons after school club. Emily, we're going to come back to the fact that you wrote a lot of fanfic, but I would love to hear your relationship to it before we dive into that.
I'm not a huge Netflix watcher. I'm not a huge TV watcher in general. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, listen to music, but I don't watch a ton of TV. But I heard of the show, I'm pretty sure, on the podcast, My Favorite Murder. In Georgia, on that show, the host complaining about how it was too like something from the 80s. And Karen being like, that's on purpose, babe. Like, she was like, it reminds me too much of like a Spielberg. And she was like, that's on purpose. That's what it's based on. And Georgia was like, oh, I guess I just don't like Steven Spielberg then.
It's a bold statement to make.
But that appealed to me. I was like, oh, well, I thought it was just a horror show, and I'm a Weenie Hut Jr., so I can't watch horror. And
Was that a SpongeBob reference? Because
It is,
that's where
yes.
it took me.
I can't watch horror, but if it's Spielberg horror, then I'm more okay with it because of the fantastical element. So I watched the
Yeah.
first season. I really, really liked it, but it didn't ping any fandom feelings within me. I didn't go searching out fan fiction. I didn't, anything like that. The third season pinged my fandom feelings. Just the different time of year, the different color grading. Literally, the tagline is "One summer can change everything," and that is kind of the season where everything turned. That interested me a lot more. And then the fourth season, Emily and I, obviously, and everybody else in the world, with Eddie Munson being introduced, everybody had more fanish feelings with season 4.
Hey there, do you like 90s movies?
Are you a millennial?
If the answer to either of these questions is yes, join me, Andreen,
And me, her brother Joel, as we rewatch 90s movies, determine their themes, and discuss how well they've aged.
We review movies based on your requests and provide a rewind rating between 1 and 5 based on how likely it is for us to rewatch them again.
So far, we've covered movies such as Clueless. Put it there, Pops. Is your broad ready yet? Like what? He came into her house mad disrespectful, bro.
Mrs. Doubtfire.
He enters a plea of insanity because he says,
Oh, that's right.
I'm crazy about my kids.
Yeah, he did say that.
How do you plead in this custody case? I plead unfit. Soul Food.
Why does the husband Lem have no accountability whatsoever?
Nah.
It really annoyed me.
Lem is-
No one said, oh, I can't believe this is your man embarrassing you. It's like, I can't believe she's doing this to me on my what? It's like, but what about the man? What about your husband? Mission Impossible. He just goes into the system and puts in like disavowed. And, then, and it just builds up a
He
list.
did a Google search. He did a Google search. And he was like, oh, Ving Rhames, that's my man. Never Been Kissed.
He said, you expect me to be happy because now I can actually be attracted to you? And then it's like,
Yeah.
yes. And he's like, I'm sorry, I can't look at you the same. So in my head, I'm like, so you want her to be 17? Like,
Exactly.
It was very, very creepy. And many more.
Follow Rewind Rewatch, a 90s movie podcast, and listen in to see how we rate your favorite 90s movies. Adios.
Later.
I love the idea of pinging fandom feelings. Can you put your finger on it? Are you talking about like writing fanfic? Are you talking about seeking out online communities? Can you explicate for the uninitiated the pinged a fandom feeling? Like, what does that mean to you?
It was explicitly the picnic table scene with Eddie and Chrissy when he says he thought she was going to be mean and scary. And she went, me? Out loud. I said, oh no, I don't have time for this. And I don't have time to make this a part of my personality. And because I was like, well, I'm not going to just start writing fic right now. Obviously, that's irresponsible.
Why would that be irresponsible?
Because I didn't know what was going to happen. So I couldn't, I didn't know if I had to tag it like canon divergent or whatever. As I was like finishing the season, I was like, well, I guess I'll just pull up the old word processor and just let's go. Because that's what happens. Like I just have to, I have to fix this for them, first of all. But I did not feel that way until Grace Van Dien went, me? And then my life was ruined.
I actually kind of thought you'd be kind of mean and scary too. Terrifying.
I'm a Steve Harrington girly. I mean, I like Eddie Munson, but I like a fictional Steve. What can I say? I think just something with the character growth in him in seasons 2 and 3 in particular, when he was such a focal character as well, just spoke to me a lot. And I have not written a ton of Stranger Things fic. My main Stranger Things fic, do I want to admit this on a Strangers podcast? It's Steve Harrington and Joyce.
Joyce is the mother?
Yes.
Okay.
It's really, really good.
It's post season 3 when Hopper is dead and he starts coming to the buyer's house every day with fast food dinner just to feed everybody.
Oh, the dream.
And because he's lonely and everybody is, dead or sad, he's worried about Max and he's worried about Eleven and he's worried about Will and Joyce and not so much Jonathan. He's not really in the fic, but we don't care about Jonathan.
We never
Take a
include
backseat.
Jonathan in our fics.
No.
I was like, I'll get like 15 chapters into a fic and be like, I don't think I've mentioned Jonathan Byers even once.
Why do you think that is?
That man is scenery. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
He blends right in.
Yeah.
He could
Yeah.
be standing in this room right now. I wouldn't know.
Someone mentioned
Yeah.
a tweet, he looks like an exhausted salaryman, and I have never gotten that out of my head. He really does.
Yeah.
He really brings that energy.
Just, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was on purpose, but I want to be like, Charlie Heaton, did they tell you like before, like a month before you start filming, like, okay, and now you just don't sleep. I need you to just not
Right.
sleep from now until we're done with the season.
You're giving Sleepless. So Jonathan didn't make it into the fanfic.
He's a brief mention, if at all. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's actually more of a choice on V's part that she wrote a story that takes place in the buyer's home. And she still didn't mention Jonathan.
But it was really fun to write. It's just a one shot. It's not like many chapters. It's pretty meaty. I think it's 10,000 or 15,000 or something like that.
I think that's so interesting that that's like a difference between you're like, this is ruining my life, but I have to just produce the ending that I need and have the resolution that makes me feel happy and explore these storylines. And I think that's what's so beautiful about fandoms. Like, I would love to get to a point in my life where I'm the original perpetrator of making a story that other people are like. I've engaged with this so deeply. I've invested in this so emotionally that I need to see it run its course in the right way. That's pretty special.
Yes.
You mentioned the references to Spielberg and you mentioned Stephen King handwriting. I was just going through these video essays. This is very embarrassing for me. I didn't come up in the 80s, and also my film education is still pretty thin. But I was looking at the comparisons of the shots between the 80s movies, and like, yes, I knew that there was 80s nostalgia in there, but I didn't know it was so referential to other major works and tied into Spielberg, and then as well with the Stephen King handwriting. I didn't quite realize like how embedded in this lore it really was.
They made such great, deliberate choices, especially, I would say, especially in the first season. The aesthetic was so tight and so locked in. And I know it's so tempting when people do anything set in the 80s to just go like fun, colorful, neon nostalgia. Everybody who's lived through the 80s remembers how fucking brown it was.
Yeah.
Like everything was brown. The glass was brown. The cars were brown. Everything had wood grain and dark beige.
Yeah.
Those were like the two main colors of the 80s. And they got this aesthetic, especially the first, like I said, the first two seasons, they really dialed it in. And like the clothes that they put Nancy in, and poor Barb, dressed her like a 45-year-old real estate agent.
Justice for Barb.
Justice for Barb.
Justice for Barb.
Justice for Barb.
We never got it. And then also, I think what held my attention after like the first episode was those kids, because they performed like Spielberg kid actors in the 80s. And it's so hard to find children actors nowadays who can ignore the camera. Every child has grown up with a camera in their face nonstop, pictures of themselves online, videos, whatever. You don't have that detachment that you need in an actor from a kid. It's so hard to find. I actually watched a bunch of like casting videos of the casting directors and the Duffer Brothers talking about like it was so hard to find
Yeah.
4 children who could do this, because he's like, they don't even mean to do it, but these kids are just winking to the camera the whole time because they're so aware of it. The 4 that they found are such little gems,
Yeah.
and they're so great, and performance that they did, it was great.
I have a million thoughts coming off of that. 80s nostalgia has become very, very big, I think, just because trends are pretty cyclical in general. But one of the things that someone pointed out is that it was one of the last times when technology was not deeply embedded in our lives, and it hadn't had that shift yet of constantly be on the internet. And that's so right when you're thinking about casting for actors and there are kids who they know when the camera's out, they're ready to do that FaceTime for grandma, send that picture to the WhatsApp family group chat. I hadn't thought about the interaction between the two in terms of 80s nostalgia and references to classic movies. I'd watched Stand By Me for the first time last night. And as we were watching it, because I was thinking about we're filming this today, and I was like, I totally see. There's a scene when they're walking on the train tracks in the forest. And then the last thing is that they were talking about how when Harry Potter came out, people thought it was going to be the last time that you grew up with a bunch of characters. But because Stranger Things took so long to film, you really got invested in the lives. And the coming of age of the cast was just as big. And of course, that's going to encourage fandom because fandom requires you to have a connection to the material outside of the actual episode. And so that was so conducive to people forming parasocial relationships with the cast, is watching them grow up.
The Duffers, they were like, and this is a 5-season story. That is how we pitched it. That is how we're writing it. That is how we're approaching it. This story will be done in 5 seasons. If you like this show, do not beg us for more seasons. We will not have them. Also,
Yes.
we cast children at possibly the worst ages of their lives to try and tell a compact, this happens in this amount of time story. I just love that. They were like, we will not even entertain expanding this in this particular universe. Like, there might be spin-offs, there might be other things, but don't write letters, please God. Don't send red vines or whatever. I really appreciated that because so much of television lately is like a cash grab. Of like, well, how much more can we wring out of this?
We'll make 5 more movies.
If the content doesn't demand it, if it doesn't need all of that to finish the story, then it's so joyless.
And it loses its magic.
It does.
So much of it is in the end of it. I don't know if you guys watched Sex and the City, but when they did the revival and Kim Cattrall was like, I just feel like we've told the story. Sex and the City 2 is probably one of the most hideous movies of all time. One of my friends, she'd never seen any of the TV show. She'd never seen any of the movies. I made her watch the second movie because we kept on referencing it one weekend. And we were like, oh my God, it's just the worst movie ever. And she was like, I cannot imagine a world in which you're invested in these characters. You're so right, it is so joyless. And it's interesting as well because you mentioned Steve Harrington. I believe that he was supposed to die in the second episode. So it's so interesting that they were super flexible about some aspects of it, like really stringent about the 5-season arc, and that shows how committed they were to it, I guess.
Yeah.
And Robin was not supposed to be a lesbian. She was supposed to be the love interest for Steve, and then Maya Hawke was like, but what if she wasn't? What if she lived and was great? She was going to be the Bob or the Eddie or the Alexi or Justice for Alexi.
Justice for Alexi. That's the part I don't watch.
You can do it, mister.
I just fast forward. I close my eyes and I fast forward.
So you mentioned your fan fiction scene where they're at the picnic table. V, did you have a moment where you watched one scene and you were like, this is it. This is going to become part of the tapestry of my personality?
The dynamic between Eddie and Chrissy is really one that got me. I've also written a lot of pre-Stranger Things, Barb and Robin secretly being a thing as like the 2 lesbians in this small town finding each other.
Love.
Like
I really love the idea of Steve being like the serial mom banger. He and Billy had such a problem. Not because Billy was a gross racist.
because Steve was successful where Billy was a hideous
true.
failure.
He was so gross. People ship him and Steve. And I'm like, Billy? The one who beat Steve unconscious while making racist threats against one of his little nuggets? And that everybody was like, oh, there's 2 white boys and they're not children. So we could do that. And they went hard.
So intensely.
Yeah. I saw also people shipping Eddie and Billy.
I think you just put your finger on something there. You're just like, yeah, these are 2 white boys that are conventionally
And it's a
attractive
blonde and
men,
a brunette.
so therefore,
It's a blonde and a
yeah,
brunette.
people are like, it's a natural pairing, and I'm like, is it, or is it just a like a? Is it a played out trope? Who knows? Who knows?
And prior to Eddie and Chrissy taking over my life, if I went into the Stranger Things fandom at all, it was to like check up and make sure that people were still writing about Joyce and Hopper. Because I just wanted the 2 of them to be happy. I was like, these 2 have been so miserable for so long. And then I found out that David Harbour also checks in to make sure that people are still writing about Joyce and Hopper. And I was like,
Stop. Wait, that's so funny. How did you find that out?
he was in, I want to say like 2nd season press tour. He's like, I just like, when I know I'm going to have like a long flight or something, he's like, I just like go on the internet and I download a bunch of like hot Joyce and Hopper stories. And it just makes my day. He's like, they say really nice things about me in fan fiction. So I just, and Winona Ryder, who's been famous since birth and knows this is not the sort of thing that you admit in front of people. She was like, you do what? He was like, oh yeah, I'll send them to you. She's like, I don't know. Don't say.
It's one of those things that, especially as an actor, you have such a connection to a character and like, you see it through a story. And even though that storyline isn't necessarily where you may want it to go, especially if you've been playing over a 5-season arc. you take some of that character on and you give yourself some of the character, not to become too romantic about it, but I imagine it would feel quite violating almost.
We're of different minds about this.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
These, like, I would never, ever want to know if anybody ever wrote fan fiction about me or a character I played. Whereas I'm like, I will seek it out. If I play a beloved character someday, if somehow the stars align and somebody's like, you, chubby, almost 40-year-old woman, you're who we need. I'll be like, yes, I'm here. If I go through the work of playing a character that is like beloved enough to have fan fiction written, if people aren't writing smutty fan fiction about me in my almost 40-year-old body, I will feel like I failed as an actress.
What did I do wrong?
Why did we fight a war, guys? Come on. What are we doing? So I'll write it myself, and then I'll just post it anonymously, and I'll start my own damn fandom. I don't care. Thea is much healthier about it than I am.
I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
If for some reason I were cast in something and I were playing a character who was not me and people were writing fan fiction about it, I would check in on that and be like, I'm curious about how they're mischaracterizing this character that I love. I never call out individual writers. I just don't believe in doing that. But I would be like, so I hear people are saying this. So they're making fun of the accent again.
Were there any other ways that you engaged with it? Did you go to events? I know they did a Stranger Things experience in New York City. And I think they're opening one in Dubai, which is wild.
I was just kind of like, I'm just going to write my fic, and then I'm going to sit quietly by myself. I don't need to dissect absolutely everything. And when the steadies versus the Hell Cheerios started getting like really mean and like too personal, this is also a problem with the parasocial relationships, because Joseph Quinn was very new to press and fandom and being a character that so many people had so many feelings about. I think, you know, he was doing his press tour for season 4 and just really having fun and not thinking that people were going to be like dissecting every last word that he said. So when somebody said, like, do you think that Eddie had a crush on Chrissy before she died? Spoiler alert. You know, and he said, well, that's how I was playing it. That just made sense to me, that she was this unattainable ideal for so long, and kind of couldn't believe this was actually happening. So the hardcore Hell Cheerios were like, oh, word of God, it's canon, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter, because
it's not in the text.
They didn't have a kissing scene. They didn't admit their feelings to each other, whatever. And then the Steve and Eddie shippers got really mad about that and just started attacking the actress who played Chrissy. And they were asking the most inappropriate, cringe-tastic questions of Joseph Quinn at cons.
Like what?
You know, do you think they were actually secretly dating? Do you think they were secretly banging? And he was just like, what are you talking about? He was like so genuinely confused. He was like, no? Because that's not what was. And then they got mad about that. And then they started shipping them in real life. It was just like, no, we're over here. They're over there. We don't cross these streams. I went to a convention to see Joe and Grace because they were both there. But that's it.
So the fandom community has gotten quite nasty and weird, because I have seen this. You're like, they're over there and we're over here. What I interpret you to mean is the actors are over there, the writers of the TV show, we're over here, and we're enjoying the text and having fun playing with it. But there's no reason to enforce those ideas onto someone else. It can be such a beautiful thing to be engaging with the text. And the same thing, of course, with shipping people in real life, the actors, and assuming that everybody who's on set together, and it is their job to professionally make you feel like they're in love. And then they're like, well, obviously they're together. This was literally their job, and it meant that they did their job well, and that's wonderful. But like, people get really muddled with reality and what someone's job is, which is to emote things to you.
I was like, I'm going to write my little Hell Cheer fics, and I'm going to share them with whoever wants to read them. And people, you know, were very nice to me. They were very complimentary. But I did start getting messages like calling me a pedophile because I was writing about teenagers who were played by people in their late 20s. First of all, there's that fictional teenagers. That's the second part. Third, the stories that I wrote that were set in the high school era, there was no sex. So everything I had written mostly was like they're grown up, they meet each other again kind of a thing. And I was still getting like hate messages calling me a pedophile and saying that I was obsessed with kids having sex. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. There's also just like no logic in that. Teens on television having sex all the time, it doesn't mean that the writers are pedophiles. That's insane. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
And people get so emotional about these things as well. They're like really attached to the characters, but in really nefarious ways.
And I think, unfortunately, it's such a common fandom playbook to see your own taste as the moral choice, everybody else's taste as therefore an immoral choice. And so people will just attach the most immoral word that they can to anybody who has different taste than their own. You know, we see it in people who get too parasocially close to actors, and we also see it with people who just are too close to their own reading of a text with fictional characters, like people who believe that if you don't see these two characters being together as the only moral endgame choice for a text, then you must be a racist, or you must be a pedophile, or you must be a Republican, or...
Sorry, that was a crazy 3.
I couldn't think of the other thing that people always throw.
Allegra, we're Americans. It is actually, it's
American,
racist, pedophiles, Republican. I mean, they're all the same thing.
What's difficult is occasionally it is true that there is a ship where, okay, the canon is saying that the main character is this character of color or whatever, and everybody is shipping the 2 white guys off in the corner. That is a racist choice. But if you say, oh, that's a racist choice, they're like, okay, but you're just doing the thing where you're attaching a terrible word to my choices because you don't agree with my taste. And it's like, no, sometimes it is actually racist to think that Hux is the main character of Star Wars and not John Boyega. Sometimes it is actually racist.
Hux and his 3 lines.
No, with Stranger Things and with Steve and Ed, a lot of the time when people know that their ship doesn't actually have any basis in canon and is never going to happen and didn't ever happen and just is a fictional construct, which is fine. That's the point of shipping things, in my opinion, as somebody obviously who wrote Stephen Joyce. Like, I know that wasn't happening, and I didn't think it was gonna. But a lot of people they get so attached to how much of their personality is tied up in their non-canon ship that they have to demonize every other ship so that they feel like they have some level of validity. And if the canon text isn't going to give them that validity, they will create it by making this landscape horrible for everybody who doesn't agree with them. We've learned doing our podcast, you know, that's been going on since 1968
Time
or
immemorial.
sooner.
Almost hilarious how we keep finding the same patterns of like, oh, well, before you could just go into somebody's inbox anonymously on Tumblr, you could write a letter to a fanzine and have your hate published. Like, you could do that
with your government name.
People used to be a lot braver with their hate, and somebody had your address to respond to you.
In like the 70s and 80s in Star Wars fandom, it was like the Luke Han shippers and the Han and Leia shippers hated each other so much they would like do drive-bys of somebody's house who was on the other side and just throwing fan art into their yard. Oh, you hate Han and Luke? Well, look at it. Like, it's in your yard now.
I'm going to take the time to draw something for a total stranger. I mean, I bet it was the best they've ever drawn. They're like, this has to be stunning. This has to be perfect because I'm going to drive to Cindy's house and I'm going to throw it in her front yard.
I also like, are you trying to ruin her day, or are you hoping that she opens up this fan art and it's like, this fan art is so beautiful, I'm convinced I've been wrong this entire time? And you're right, you've converted me. I also think you said something really important there, is that like people wrap up so much of their own personalities in the interpretations of the text, the characters that they perceive and the qualities of those characters that they want to emulate, that when they're writing fanfic, such a personal interpretation for some people, not for everybody. But what I think about fandom is that a lot of it is identity construction and seeing these figures in the media and being like, oh, I can try and follow the behavior of that character, use that as a role model. And so anything that confronts that is not only a personal affront, but like an undermining of their character, and it's so exhausting. I'm like, you can just enjoy things and let other people have other opinions, and that's okay. But I get it. It's a double-edged sword of people connecting to something so deeply.
The lengths that people will go to interpret the text the way that they need to see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about Steady Shippers again. Like the last 2 seasons, the breakdowns of things that I have seen. And obviously, you know, Steve was wearing this yellow sweatshirt, and later on somebody had something yellow in the very same vicinity as Eddie, so that means that they were signaling to each other and blah blah blah, and all this other stuff. And like, I just want to like hold their little faces and be like, they're not thinking about this. When they're building these scenes, when they're writing these scripts, they're not thinking about shipping. They have decided whose relationships they're going to focus on, and it's not this one. And then you're getting furious when this minutia that you have focused on doesn't add up to something that other people agree with. Like, oh my God, I saw this, like, all the ways that Steve is mourning Eddie in season 5 breakdown list. And I'm like, he's not, though. I'm sure he felt bad. I'm sure he felt guilty because of how everything shook out. But like, he was worried about Dustin. Right. You know, he wasn't, his feelings about Eddie are wrapped up in Dustin, not it was some great lost love. I mean, fandom is great at like plumbing the depths. V and I both have been in, you know, theater our whole lives and done a lot of acting and everything. And like, I don't know how to tell people it's just a performance. Actually, a lot of the time, if you're like really focused on performing, you're not thinking about how also you're signaling tiny little, like, nobody is counting how long they're holding their eye contact, because Eddie is not looking at Steve when you have this close up. He has a sight line. Somebody's like holding something. Like, you have to look right here. And that's what he's doing. He's not looking at Steve.
The mental acrobatics you have to do to fit something into your specific worldview. Like we said, what an amazing joy to be able to be a performer that evokes such emotion in someone. But also, what a double-edged sword. This happens all the time with big stars like Taylor Swift, and they're like, oh, and she stepped out on this date wearing this color jacket. And I'm like, I have never thought about the colors that I'm wearing in my entire life. And I think how scary it would be to have someone more invested in my own life and the decisions that I make than I am. Like, it's such a scary thing. And you also mentioned the actors slightly being harassed and things. Did you follow the careers of the actors as they went as well? Like, are you still involved in their offshoots and their other projects?
Joseph Quinn, he's my Blurbo, my baby boy.
I had to look this up. Blurbo is an internet slang term used in fandom communities to describe a person's absolute favorite fictional character. According to Google, it originated on Tumblr as a way to playfully mock fans who obsess over niche characters and expect everyone else to know exactly who they are. Like, you don't know Blurbo? That's crazy.
And like, if I see that David Harbour's going to be in something, I'm like, I'll probably check that out because I like David Harbour. Lily Allen and David Harbour thing. And all I have to say about that was when I heard about it, I went, yikes.
Yeah. We were talking a lot about how people who seem to be really famous in the UK and then you speak to people in the US and they're like, who? And I think Lily Allen is that person. Quick explainer. Lily Allen was a really famous singer in the 2000s in the UK. If you were growing up in London at the time like me, she was the cool it girl. I think in October 2025, she released an album years after she had left the mainstream pop culture scene. And the album was all about how she had married a famous actor on Stranger Things, David Harbour, and their marriage had fallen apart. And the album shot into popularity because people miss Lily Allen, but also because it contained extremely salacious details about the affairs that he was having and how the marriage fell apart. Like, when I was growing up, Lily Allen was the it girl. She was so cool. She was so famous. And I hadn't watched Stranger Things when I think the album came out. So I found out who David Harbour was through Lily Allen.
What a good introduction.
No.
But also at the same time, I'm a big believer in they have their personal life. Unless they've done something morally reprehensible. I mean, yes, it's not great, but it's also someone's personal relationship. It's not like they're a predator, as far as I know, or they're causing harm on a society-wide scale. Other than that, I'm like, this really feels like none of my business. But it did bring me to Stranger Things in the first place, because I spoke to my boyfriend and I was like, who the fuck is David Harbour? He was like, you don't know who David Harbour is?
That's really funny.
Did the show encourage you to think about yourself in a certain way? Did it inspire you to see the world in some sort of different way, like give you a new perspective on the world around you?
They had heard originally was this is based on an urban legend of a containment breach in a government lab in the 80s. And so I learned a bunch about like the Montauk lab incident and all of that stuff, which I love at the end that they threw a little line in about like to reference that where Hopper's getting reassigned to a place outside of Montauk. I thought that was cute. It didn't like awaken me to anything.
The Montauk Project is a conspiracy theory that inspired the Duffer Brothers when they were writing. According to Wikipedia, it alleges there were a series of government projects in Montauk, New York, for the purpose of developing psychological warfare techniques and exotic research, including time travel. It became a public discussion when two people, Preston Nichols and Al Bielek, both claimed to have recovered repressed memories from their period of involvement. Preston Nichols also claims that he was periodically abducted to continue his participation against his will, which is funny because I thought the whole thing was about MK Ultra. Between the 1950s and 1970s, the CIA ran a project to test LSD on vulnerable populations and research how it affected people. According to Google, they covertly distributed the drug to hospitals, prisons, and universities. Look it up. It's fucked up. You should know about it.
I would say nothing about the actual world or characters changed things for me, but it did in a lot of writing ways. The first season in particular, I really like that there's the three groups and they each have 1/3 of the whole mystery, and they cannot solve the mystery because they aren't synced up with the other two groups and the other two genres that the other two groups are operating in at that point. And I felt like that was such a smart way to do a cross-genre TV show, because so often people will try to be like, you know, it's sci-fi meets a Western, and then it's just a sci-fi, but there's horses or whatever. And that's not actually cross-genre. You just put horses in
Are you talking about Nope?
No, I was actually thinking of Wild Wild West, but I think that's giant spiders and not horses. Or steampunk is so often sci-fi plus Victorian, but it's just Victorian except for you added robots. Or like so many cross-genre things don't actually have the multiple genres interact as themselves before combining. And I thought that that was such a smart way to write, especially, like I said, that first season. So as a writer and as a reader, Stranger Things, I thought, was very deservedly influential. And I also feel like Stranger Things, again, on a writing side, gave me something really concrete to point to when because people in fandom spaces always want redemption arcs. You can't have a character ever just be a villain, because they will have fans who want them to be redeemed by the end. And sometimes they're given a redemption arc, but it's 99% of the time done really poorly and shoehorned into the last 30 seconds of that character's life. But Stranger Things with Steve was such a well done, well earned, well acted redemption arc where he's given internal motivations to become better and constantly on this journey to become better and better each season.
Something that I thought was interesting about
great.
Steve, really quick to add, is that it's not entirely linear. He doesn't just turn into a white knight and then becomes the very best. Like, he still screws up. He's still very selfish. It's nice to see that they let him be a flawed, redeemed character. In season 2, like, he is ignoring Nancy's pain because he doesn't want to focus on it, because he's also 17 and he can't deal with it. And, you know, in season 3, he does endanger those children.
Very much
Like,
so.
very much so. He very much puts those children's lives in great, great danger.
But I feel like so many shows or movies or books or anything that try to have redeemed characters don't consider those internal mechanics of, okay, we've introduced this guy as this very self-centered, not even in like a conceited way, just like he sees the world through how does it interact with him. And even though he's opened up to realize like, oh shit, my actions have impacts on other people, like he still is seeing that in relation to how am I acting? How am I doing this? How am I being perceived? And so I feel like, again, it was just such a smartly written redemption arc. I'm so grateful that we all have Steve that we can point to and say, like, this is how you write this, how a character changes to become a better person and why. Because yes, on some level it is for Nancy, but it also is very much like he realizes that it doesn't feel good to him to make people feel bad.
I think really does start when he shows up not at Nancy's house. He goes to Jonathan's house because he doesn't know Nancy's going to be there. And he wants to just talk to Jonathan and apologize. Then he shows up and he gets, swung at with a baseball bat full of nails, a gun pointed at his face by his now ex-girlfriend, and, chased by a monster. Then we love him because he does run. He freaks out and he runs away because Nancy almost shoots him. And then he goes back.
Right.
He fights with them. He's like, oh shit, they're definitely going to be eaten by a monster if I don't go in, do a cool ninja swing around with the bat in the sparkling light. One of the best shots ever.
Are there any other standout characters, character arcs, protagonists that you feel are worth mentioning?
I love Dustin so much.
Yeah.
He's probably my favorite character. The actor's portrayal of grief in the last season is so heartbreaking because it's so unpleasant to watch. And I really thought it was great that they didn't shy away from watching how ugly that was. Self-destructing, and he's not talking to his friends who he loves. Like he's just letting it consume him, and he's pushing everybody away. It's so much more realistic.
And it felt like a strong echo to in the previous season when Max is pushing everybody away. Like I feel like Stranger Things as a whole did a really good job with characters who are grieving. I feel like in general, it's a very strongly written show for the different ways that grief can show in people. And they did a good job of connecting, like, this is this character's core personality trait. How is that going to be affected by their grief? Emily and I obviously are both, writers and readers, but writing especially, I think we both find Stranger Things to just be very smart in a lot of its choices. And I think that's the biggest way that, for me, it's affected things. I feel like none of the Stranger Things characters, maybe Nancy a little bit because I've always wanted to be a girl detective.
Who hasn't?
Right?
That's such a sick-ass thing to be, yeah.
But none of the Stranger Things characters have I ever really looked at and been like, I want to be like that person.
I did not want to be any part of the Stranger Things world. Like, really, I just wanted to give Eddie and Chrissy a happy ending, like, because they had so much potential. And the fact that even, like, the directors, because they'd already killed both of them by the time they had to go back and film the picnic scene, that they were watching it and they were like, what have we done? This is so good. They're so good together. Why did we do this? Like, to the point that they were like, could we rewrite some of this and make it so that they could at least be together in other episodes? And
have some
because
time.
of COVID, because all of the constraints, all the budgetary constraints, everybody, I guess, that they pitched this to was like, no, there will be no more rewrites. There will be no more reshoots. We're done. There's ways that characters get in your brain, I guess. And like, sometimes you look at a character and you're like, I want to be them, or I see myself so much in them. And that's why I'm connected to them. Like, that's how I feel about Darcy Lewis in the MCU. And then there's, other characters that you're like, I just want to make them kiss like Barbies. And then there's like other characters where you're like, I don't know, I just want to like pick him up and like put him on my mouth and go like, "Arr!" Like a dog.
That's Steve Harrington. Oh, see, that's Steve Harrington.
It manifests in all fun ways. But yeah, I think that to look at something and be like, oh, you're a fan of Eddie and Chrissy, it's because you want to be the one that Eddie has a crush on. And I'm like, no, I would not.
No.
Not to brag, but I've been the one Eddie had a crush on in high school, and it's not fun. I just want this very sad cheerleader to have somebody who loves her, and she had, of like total 10 minutes of screen time maybe, of portraying a very conflicted, very dark, sad character who has a lot going on. She has a terrible eating disorder. Her parents are awful to her. Her boyfriend has no idea because he doesn't actually care about her. Her grades are slipping, all this other stuff. And then she dies horribly.
Alone.
But it wouldn't be we wouldn't hate Vecna so much. He wouldn't be such a great villain if he was like, actually, she's too sad. I'm not going to kill her.
It's also very easy, I think, to have a character who has all that stuff going on and have the audience kind of check out and not care about them because it's just too sad. Yeah. There's just too much going on. But Chrissy is so, like you said at the beginning of our interview, when she said, me? Like, she couldn't possibly be mean and scary. Yeah. Like, she's so likable. And in that moment, you're like, okay, I'm rooting for this girl. Yeah. So much that when she is dying horribly alone, that is what makes Vecna suddenly a more formidable villain than the Mind Flayer or just a Demogorgon or any of the other villains that we've had in Stranger Things.
I mean, the Laura Palmer trope of the very pretty, seemingly healthy, happy, scary cheerleader girl having a very, very difficult internal life and having her own private struggles, and that's a very powerful and compelling trope. Even if you're a trope, you can still do it well, but it does show up.
Tropes are what all entertainment is built off of.
Something's popular for a reason, and that's fine. I mean, it depends on the universe that it's in. I think I struggle with the trope when I see it 1,000 miles away in a book that I'm like, this is going to take a million years to get to, and it's not going to be a surprise. But then some people find that really comforting. Like the whole romantic book stuff is based off of a lot of quote unquote formulaic stories that people really enjoy, and they really like the tension that it builds. And, you know, it is what it is.
Hey there, listeners. We're Sisters Assembled, a Marvel Theory podcast, and your place for all things MCU.
Each week, we tackle a new topic relating to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, including reactions to the Disney Plus shows and the movies, deep dives on characters and important concepts, news, and theories. You can find Sisters Assembled on your podcast platform of choice, on most social platforms, or you can check out our website at sistersassembled.com.
So come along for the ride, because Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.
Okay, we've spoken a lot about storylines that we find compelling and characters that we find really compelling. Was there anything that you're like, that didn't sit right with me and that kind of annoyed me? Any inconsistencies in the plot that you found frustrating?
I'm in the minority because I really liked season 5 as an ending. I know that a lot of people did not like season 5 and they thought everybody was out of character, which I was like, are they out of character, or did we just have too long of a break in between seasons and you decided what the characters are supposed to be? I mean, the only one that ever sticks out is the beginning of season 4. Like, Joyce, why on earth did you send a grieving, homeschooled for 1 year by a slightly undereducated police officer in the woods, an under-socialized, undereducated, grieving 14-year-old girl to public school?
Yeah, that's fair.
What is wrong with you? Like, Hopper trusted you with his child. When she left the house every morning and be like, oh, sweetheart, you can't wear those patterns together.
To be fair, Joyce is also the one who was cutting Will's hair like that.
That's true.
So...
You know what? You know what? Joyce, I'm sorry. I love you, but you are not blameless. You have a lot of shit that you should have worked on before Hopper trusted you with his daughter. That's literally the only one that stands out because everything else I can kind of explain away.
What about you, V?
I understand why it didn't get followed up on as much as I think it should have, but somewhere along the way, we lose Barb as a motivating force for Nancy. And I feel like Nancy in season 1 would never let that not be her motivating force. I understand that they have to make a show for people who aren't paying attention. I understand that they have to make a show for people who, for some reason, start with season 4 or whatever, and then don't go back and watch the first 3 seasons, as somebody who sometimes does things like that. Like,
I was about to say, that sounds like me.
I can see why they wouldn't constantly have Nancy be like, Barb, 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 Barb. But like when all
Yeah.
the characters in season 4 are going through her room looking for music, where is that photo booth slip of her and Barb's photos? Why is that not still on the mirror? Like, why are there not more pictures of her and Barb still up in the room? Like, there's just small things that could have been there.
Justice for Barb. We never got it.
Justice for Barb. Barb was like the person I was rooting for. I was like, I fucking love Barb. She's great.
The only voice of reason.
Because I was also not an irresponsible teen. So when Barb was laying down the law, I was like, that's me. You also had pointed towards this, both of you, like the long pauses between the seasons and how season 5 was, to a lot of fans, slightly disappointing. We spoke at the beginning how from season 1 to 5, they had that arc in mind, according to the writers already. Do you think that rings true, or do you empathize with people who think that season 5 was a bit of a... I mean, I wrote in my notes, I was like, does season 5 seem like a victory lap? But then I said, I've been thinking a lot about Euphoria recently, so I think that might just be projection.
I think for me, knowing how much they changed, like keeping Steve alive, introducing Robin as a main character, I feel like it was a little bit of a How I Met Your Mother situation, but not as bad, where, yes, it was pitched to have these character arcs complete in this way, but I think what they meant when they said that was they always intended Eleven to sacrifice herself. And sticking with that, regardless of how all these other characters grew and changed, felt a little bit off. And I can see being upset about that. What I mostly see people being upset about is that Mike and Will didn't end up together, which they never were going to. That was never part of the 5-year plan. That was very much a fandom construction and wanted to have this happen because when you identify with a character, and a lot of people identified with Will or with Mike, you want that character to have a happy ending. And Will does have a happy ending. It's just not with Mike. Mike arguably does not have a happy ending. I mean, I don't even think it's arguably. Mike just doesn't have a happy ending. I mean, he's grieving horribly. You know, that's kind of where we leave him. My perception was they always intended for the core 4 and 11 to end where they brought the core 4 and 11. And like I said, it was a little bit of a How I Met Your Mother feeling in terms of like, we wrote this ending and this is how we pitched it. So we have to stick with it because this is the story that we said we were going to tell. It didn't necessarily take totally into consideration how the smaller changes throughout time have affected it. I do also think that they were kind of smart because they knew where 11 was always going to end. She doesn't interact as much with Steve, Robin, these characters who were not part of that initial plan and that initial pitch as much. So like their being around isn't going to necessarily affect her ending in the same way. Whereas like if she'd been really, really, really close to Steve and Robin, you know, then the fact that they don't play into her ending at all would have been weirder.
The fact that they explored a gay arc with Will's character at all in 1985 is huge. The anger that people had about it, like, why did they make it a big deal? Everybody always knew he was gay. I'm like, because you don't know what it was like to be a gay teenager in 1985. I mean, not to sound like, you know, a grumpy old boomer, but like you kind of had it too good. Like if you don't see what a big deal them including this storyline is, like, that's because you have it too good. You know, a lot of people said it was unnecessary, and if they had decided to make that the thing that the insecurity that Vecna was going to push on, you know, it was going for the hurt. And if they hadn't taken the time to have that really great, beautiful coming out scene, it really left the door open to be like, no, actually, he could end up alone with his friends and family disowning him. Like, they wouldn't. We know that. But, like, it was nice to see it explicitly explained. The other thing, I just want to, like, roll my eyes a bit, because do you know how hard it is to end something?
Something that is so beloved as well, and in a way that everybody is satisfied with. Yeah, it's intense.
And the threads that they had, everyone's like, they left so many plot holes and so many loose ends. It's like, there is not enough time in the world to tie up every single thing in that universe that they created with a nice little bow. So, I mean, V and I talked about it on our podcast a bunch of like, well, are they just going to kill everybody? How could they possibly end this in any way that is remotely happy? It's so often that the case is like, well, we don't actually know how to end this without the government being like, actually, we just can't have any of this, so we're just going to drop a bomb on Hawkins.
Just scorched earth.
It was a dream. It was a D&D campaign. There have been so many like beloved franchises that just ruin their legacy in the last episode. Supernatural, Game of Thrones,
How I Met Your Mother.
There are so many that they just are like, okay, we're done. We don't care. Whatever happens, just kill everybody. Who cares?
Star Wars.
And the fact that they tied up, I want to say 90% of what they started out with, and they gave everybody a happy ending. Everybody that I care about, V, got a happy ending. They had that really beautiful scene at the end narrating what's going to happen with everybody, and 11 could still be alive. Hopper and Joyce ended up together. The big kids all had jobs, and they were deciding to like come back together and have little friendship reunions, and that's all we want.
What is wild, especially with streaming and people's attention being so dispersed and how much content there is these days, especially compared to the reference pieces of these TV shows, movies that they were doing, is how much of a cultural impact Stranger Things had at the time. I was in college when they released their first season, I think in 2016. And I remember it was the only TV show that people in my sorority would get together and watch in the living room together. They were dressing like Stranger Things. I remember so vividly. I went to college in New York City, doing a scavenger hunt around New York City, and you had to submit photos to take things off the list. And all of the photos were movie references, and like half of them were Stranger Things. There were loads of pictures of girls in my sorority holding the Eggo waffles in the aisles of supermarkets and stuff. Like, it was so big at the time, and I'm so amazed that I managed to not watch it. But why do you think it got so much traction? It became so culturally relevant.
There's two things that I can think of right off the top of my head. One is, I think it does such a good job honoring all of those references that it makes it a really easy entry point for multiple generations of people to watch it and feel engaged by it. Because you can watch it as its own thing and not be watching it for the references. And it's engaging and a good story and well made and feels very timeless. Or you can be watching it knowing those references and kind of be watching it as like a scavenger hunt almost, and be like, oh, I recognize this shot from Stand By Me, and this shot from Star Wars, and this shot from It, and this shot from whatever. So you can be, you know, Gen X or older millennial, or you can be younger millennial or Gen Z, and it's equally compelling for multiple age groups, which I think always helps something, you know, saturate culture more. I also think that it was multiple genres. So you could be a horror girly like Emily, or you could be a Weenie Hut Jr. like me and be watching it more for like the magical ET-like adventure that the kids are on. Or you could be really into like conspiracy theories and be watching it for Hopper and Joyce's story and like police procedurals and the X-Files, and all these very different reference points are all honored and done in a way where you could be a fan of any of those different genres and come into the show and be engaged by it. So I feel like it was one of the few things that has come out in the last 10 years, I guess, at this point, that didn't have to whittle down and hone down so much on a teeny tiny slice of audience. It was able to really open up and say, like, we want almost anybody, you know, over the age of 12 to be able to watch this show and enjoy it.
Wow, yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. That's a very good summary, very good thought. What about you, Emily?
Thank you.
I mean, she's great, right? They did go so hard into making it so cohesive. It's not easy to tell essentially 3 different stories 3 different ways and have it all braid together to make one actually really compelling mystery story. It was well written. It was well shot. It was also released in the summer of 2016, which was not a great time for a lot of people, not just me, a lot of people wanted solid escape. I'm going to turn my brain off because if I see He Who Must Not Be Named on my television for one more second, I'm going to lose my mind. That first season is so strong. It's such a good example of when people are trusted to tell their story and they're given the money and the space. And also because Netflix TV was new, like Netflix shows were new.
Yes.
There wasn't as many streaming shows to watch. If you recall, 10 years ago, it was like House of Cards and Stranger Things. Stranger Things was really the acid test of, can we sell this model? Can we make people watch an 8-hour movie, essentially? So they got to play with this new format. It was a gamble from start to finish that people would want to watch this much TV, essentially. Because I don't think it would have worked if it had been a network week by week, 40 minutes or whatever. The stars really just aligned to tell this story. Right place, right time, right everything.
I also think that it hit, like you were saying, at exactly the right cultural moment because it was the summer of 2016 and it is about monsters and we had the fucking clowns in the woods and it's about government conspiracy theories and everybody on all sides was believing in those. Everybody was looking back at how did we get to this point? Everything is terrible and a literal 80s villain is on my TV screen all the fucking time. Why? So I feel like all of those aspects too made it feel very engaging and timeless regardless of what your reference point for the 80s is. So
the issue with casting children, I mean, beyond them having trouble with acting, is the amount of exposure that they're given to when they become so big, and they became so big. I think hopefully one of the reasons why they cast a bit older, because those people are able to handle the fame a lot better. But these kids were really in the center of things, and for a long, long time, because the series went on for so long. Do you have any thoughts and feelings about the scandals that happened, or the way that people followed these children around and how it affected their lives? I know, for instance, Millie Bobby Brown has been treated hideously by the media in some of the things that I've read. And also, I'm not going to pretend that I know anything about her life, but it doesn't surprise me at all that she's now married and a mother, even though she's a lot younger, because I do think that situation forces you to mature really, really early. Yeah. What are your thoughts on centering children in such a huge cultural phenomena?
I really didn't follow anybody in the cast at all. I know very little about anybody in the cast of Stranger Things except for Winona. The only kind of scandal that I followed at all was just how gross a lot of grown women have always been about Finn Wolfhard and how inappropriately people have been treating him since he was in very early childhood on this show, and being so disappointed with like a lot of adult famous women sliding into his DMs when he's like 12 or 13 and just being really gross and being like, come on guys, like you came up in this Hollywood system of having adult men treat you like this and knowing how horrible it feels. Don't turn it around and do that to this child now, you know? That's really the main one that I can recall. Is I remember in like 2017, he posted screenshots of like that she'd DM'd him and been like, so in 5 years or whatever, hit me up, and him being like, don't do this. This is gross.
It's been, I want to say, pleasantly surprising how few scandals any of them have been involved in, because we do fail child actors so often. People do not protect them. They treat them like adults from the time they're too young, and nobody stands between them and the rest of the world and says, like, this is deeply inappropriate to talk to them like this. Do not do it. Probably having Winona there on set, because she still is so protective of those kids, especially early, like, fan stuff. She's been famous since she was 10 years old, and she knows how awful people are. Like Millie Bobby Brown, the way people think that they're entitled to their opinions about her appearance and her choices. I mean, growing up in general is an absolute horror show. Growing up in front of billions of people on the most popular streaming show that's ever existed. Season 4 took so long because of COVID, because they were shut down for a year. Season 5 took so long because of the strikes. Like, they had these huge gaps because of stuff that was completely out of their control, so that these kids got so much older, so much faster. And so, like, it is weird that we left 11 in season 3 looking like an awkward 14-year-old. And in season 4, she's 17 or 18 years old. That's what happens.
Who is your celebrity crush?
I mean, my poor husband has to live with this. Like, it's Joseph Quinn. I never cared if I saw Eddie Munson again, but I was like, I guess I'll watch whatever this man chooses to do with his career, which has led me down some dark paths, I'm not going to lie. It's led me to hand over money for things like Gladiator 2. Joseph. And the fact that he is now tied up for 4 years. I have gone back to the MCU specifically because of Johnny Storm. I'd cut ties. I was like, I'm done. And they're like, he's going to be in Fantastic Four. I'm like, I don't even like them. But here I am, handing over my ticket money. Here he is, being adorable, being the most lovable Johnny Storm to ever Johnny Storm. I was like, great, thanks. Thanks, Joe. He owes me a rom-com. He owes me a rom-com that I wrote.
That seems like a fair trade.
I paid money to see you in Gladiator 2 twice. Okay, movie theater money. You owe me at least $30. Okay, at least $30. And me getting one of my stories turned into a movie that you were then starring in.
What about you, V?
I would say probably Tatiana Maslany. I have to say Chris Evans because I don't know. I'm contractually obliged to say Chris Evans, but Tatiana Maslany, Elizabeth Olsen are probably the two who I would be most likely to like go watch something stupid because they're in it.